What if the very things you're doing to make life easier are actually the reason that you feel overwhelmed? I recently shared in a video about how sometimes I feel like I'm in a constant fight or flight. And in that video, I was sharing some things that I had done to simplify my life in order to minimize that feeling. For me, 2025 has definitely been a huge shift for the way that I'm living my life. Maybe it's now being a mom of 4, maybe it's just getting older, maybe it's a combination of all of these things, but I find myself so desperately trying to create a life of simplicity, of being grounded in the present, of being connected to the here and now through myself, my kids, my home, my actions, my community, and it's requiring me to let go of a lot of habits that I used to have that I realized weren't making me any happier and weren't making my life any easier. They were actually making me overwhelmed. They were tapping into my fight or flight. And so today I want to share with you what those are. These habits that might be making you also feel overwhelmed. And by might be making you feel overwhelmed, I mean they probably are making you feel overwhelmed. Number 1 is having all of the apps on your phone. Apps sell us convenience. This app is going to make life easier, it's going to make it faster and better, but at a certain point, it starts to do the opposite. Don't get me wrong, some apps are very useful, but too many apps do a couple of things. 1, they steal our attention, constantly pinging us. The ones with algorithms keep us hooked and keep us scrolling. 2, they give us the ability to always be on. We can respond to an email from bed. We can check our kids' progress reports while we're standing in line at the grocery store. And 3, most of them end up taking more time than they are worth. You can fight with a glitchy app to order your burrito bowl, or you can just walk into the store, talk to a human, and order it. These apps have convinced us that they're making our lives easier, but instead they're stealing our time, our attention, and never allowing ourselves to clock out. Now, as a lot of you know, a few months ago, I dumbed down my phone, which some people said they don't like the term of dumbing down my phone, but the term dumb down comes from the movement of people moving away from smartphones. The opposite of a smartphone is a dumb phone, and it's using phones that don't have all of the gadgets that a smartphone does. And I honestly actually plan to move fully to a dumb phone in a couple of months, but in the time being, I've deleted basically all of the apps off my phone that weren't absolutely necessary, like absolutely. So I don't have any social media, I don't have any shopping apps, no productivity apps. Basically, I'm just trying to make it as bare minimum as possible. And what I've learned is that almost all of the apps that I was using, I can go to my computer to use. When I need to schedule a grocery pickup or I need to send a Venmo payment, I can go to my computer. And at first, not having all of this stuff on my phone felt really weird. It felt weird that I couldn't just grab my phone and make a quick payment or check the weather really quick. Things that I had convinced myself were conveniences that I could easily just do it. But I quickly realized that it was actually really freeing to not be able to do it. Not being tethered to my device, reliant on it for functioning. Now I have work time where I sit down at my computer and I'll do these things then. I'll make any purchases I need to make. I'll log into things that I need to see, make payments, whatever. But it's intentional. I'm sitting down at a computer to work, not trying to squeeze it in while I am making dinner or sitting in the school pickup line. In so many ways, I've become enslaved to my phone, thinking that I couldn't live without it. And we've been conditioned to believe that these things are making our lives easier, these apps on our phone. But when we really force ourselves to step back and think about it, it isn't. I'm going to include a hot tip at the end of each of these, and the hot tip here is to consider at least deleting the apps that you have not used in the last 30 days, and I encourage you to go further and delete some of the apps that you can use on your computer instead. Things like grocery pickup, DoorDash, Venmo, and I dare to say social media. A quick break to tell you about the sponsor for today's video, which is Element. Now, it is very rare that I ever accept a sponsor for my channel when it is not a product that I have already been using, and Element is no exception. Element has been my go-to electrolyte powder for probably 3 or 4 years now. Element delivers a science-backed ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium with no junk like sugar, artificial colors, gluten, or fillers. I usually pour 1 packet into my large tumbler of water in the morning, and then I drink it throughout the day to help avoid dehydration and maintain energy levels throughout the day. Electrolytes help you with everything from nerve function to hormone balance to nutrient absorption, as well as fluid regulation. And right now, Element is offering a free sample pack to my listeners. This is 8 different packets. It's like a variety to try different flavors. You will get this free with any order. It's a really great way to try some of their different flavors. Personally, my favorites are the raspberry salt and the watermelon salt. Get yours at drinkelement.com/thatpracticalmom. Mom. That is drinklmnt.com/thatpracticalmom. 2, impulse shopping. Did you know that the average person spends over $300 a month on impulse purchases? And a recent study showed that over 60% of people say that they regret their last impulse purchase. So we are spending hundreds of dollars a month on things we're more than likely to regret. What are we doing? Well, here's the thing. Impulse shopping isn't really about the item. It's about how we feel about the item. Impulse shopping activates your brain's reward system, especially a release of dopamine, that feel-good chemical. We've all heard about it. But what's really interesting that I've come to learn about impulse shopping, I did a deep dive into research about it a few years back, is that it's not getting the item that triggers the biggest dopamine spike. It's actually the anticipation. There's this really interesting study they did with rats where the rats would pull a lever and then they would get a treat or something. And over time, the researchers found that the dopamine in the rats actually spiked when they were pressing the lever, not by the time they actually got the treat. It was the anticipation of the treat that created the chemical high from the dopamine. Impulse shopping, especially online, is exactly the same way. It's the anticipation of the purchase that boosts your dopamine even more than actually receiving the item. I'm sure you've all felt this. Have you ever bought something online? You're really excited, but by the time you arrived and you opened the box, you were just like, okay, fine. The dopamine hit had already happened during the purchase. So what I have been teaching myself to do is to not buy things right away. When I see a product or it looks interesting or I want to buy it, I add it to my cart and I wait. A perfect example literally happened to me this last weekend. Michael and I were out on the front porch. We were talking about some landscaping projects that we want to do, and we added some things to our cart, but we didn't check out. And a few days later, as we were talking over what purchases we were going to be making, we agreed that we didn't really need to do those projects. And honestly, once we really thought about it, we're like, we don't even have the time to do the projects. If we had bought the items in the moment, we would be a few $100s short. We'd be stuck with a bunch of supplies in the yard reminding us of a project that we didn't even have time to do. And that's overwhelm at literally every corner. Impulse shopping wrecks your budget, creates clutter in your home and in your mind. So my hot tip here is add to cart but don't check out. This is my favorite tip, and I know a lot of people will say to do this tip and to do 24 hours. I suggest longer. I think a week is the best. In my experience, I do not find the hour marker to be enough time to be successful enough. I say have one time a week where you check out your carts. Maybe it's every Sunday night or whatever. If you're married, do this with your partner. You sit down, you open all of your carts, and you discuss what you really need. You will see that distance actually does not make the heart grow fonder when it comes to impulse purchases in your cart. And when you see an entire week of possible impulse purchases all together, when you kind of add up the bill, it can be a little bit of a wake-up call to be like, do I really need this stuff? Third habit that's probably definitely making you overwhelmed is multitasking. And I gotta be honest, guys, it pains me a little bit to say this because in many ways, I used to think that I thrived on multitasking. And maybe, honestly, when I was younger, maybe I could. Maybe this is just looking in the mirror and be like, Kallie, you're getting older. But what I have learned is that when I switch back and forth between tasks too often, it drains me. And it usually would leave me less productive in the long term, like in the entire day. And then I learned a very interesting term called the switch cost effect. I learned this in the book Stolen Focus. The switch cost effect basically says that your brain mentally lags when you jump from one task to the other. So while you can click from one tab to the other in a millisecond, your brain doesn't do it that quick. It lingers on the task for a bit, even if it's for a second or two. And it takes time and energy for your brain to reorient to the new task. And that little bit of lag, if you multiply it by hundreds of task switches that we do every day, it's exhausting your brain. And if you think that me saying hundreds of task switches a day is an exaggeration, it's not. Studies have shown that on average, people switch tasks every 3 to 4 minutes, which is well over 300 times a day. And so obviously studies have found that multitasking doesn't just reduce your productivity, sometimes between 20 to 40%, leaving most people with that feeling of being scattered and overwhelmed. On top of that, there was a 2024 study from the University of Sussex that found that people who frequently multitask actually have lower gray matter density in the part of their brain related to cognitive control and emotional regulation. So what does this mean? It's just like some fancy words I'm throwing out at you. It basically means that chronic multitasking multitasking might not just make you less productive and feel more overwhelmed, but it could actually be rewiring your brain in ways that make it harder for you to focus over time. So my hot tip here is to work in batches for your tasks. This is literally the system I used when I designed my planner that allows you to list all the things you need to do in a week or in a month on a brain dump and then batch similar items together into blocks of time. The biggest culprit here is going to be distractions along the way. Most of us are task switching these days by switching tasks from like texting to opening our email to checking the weather really quick. So the best that you can do to also remove those distractions when you're working on a batch of tasks, maybe put your phone on do not disturb, or even better, literally just leave it in a different room. You have to fight the temptation of distraction and switching back and forth between the tasks. Number 5, mindless scrolling. You grab your phone to check the weather and suddenly it's 20 minutes later and you know what your college friend, roommate, cousin had for lunch or whatever. The daily average that people spend on their phones is honestly alarming. A most recent study came out saying that they think it's over 5 hours a day, and that's just on your phone, not on your computer and your TV, just on the phone. And that equates to spending 80 days of your year staring at your phone. And if you think to yourself, oh, I don't know if I really scroll that much, you're probably mistaken, because studies using phone usage tracking have found that most people underestimate their phone time by about 40%. So there's a good chance that you probably spend more time scrolling than you think. And I'm saying this not to be accusatory, it's because I have seen it in myself. I'm not immune to this. I have battled the same addiction on my smartphone that so many of us have, because phones are addictive. It is why I'm moving to a dumb phone. Phones are addictive in a couple of ways. First, they use something called variable rewards. This is like a slot machine. It is the idea that you don't always know what you're gonna see when you open them. And this unpredictability keeps you coming back to them, like pulling a lever on a slot machine. Not to mention that emotional triggers like boredom and stress keep you coming back. And I personally think this is one of the most addictive parts of them, is that they're a quick fix for boredom, for loneliness, for stress. Scrolling your phone gives your brain a quick dopamine hit, which makes you feel better for a moment. You're distracted, you're stimulated. That relief, even if it lasts just a few seconds, is enough for your brain to say, hey, that worked last time, so let's do it again. And that's how a habit loop becomes formed. And because our phones are always near us, it becomes, a path of least resistance. It is very easy to get this habit. Mindless scrolling leads to overwhelm because it bombards your brain with way more information than it can realistically process. In just a few minutes, you might take in a really sad news story, then a cute baby video, then some ad for shoes, a friend's vacation, and then a hilarious parenting joke, all without any context or resolution, leaving your brain totally scattered, overstimulated, and honestly, just exhausted. I recently was chatting with the amazing author and speaker Emma Seppala on the podcast that I'm a part of, and in that discussion, she said that our brains consume 60,000 gigabytes of information in a day, which is actually an older stat. She was saying she thinks it's probably much higher now, and that amount is actually enough to crash a small computer in a week. You're reacting nonstop without time to process, so instead of feeling relaxed, you end up feeling more drained than when you picked up your phone. And on top of all of that, because scrolling feels passive, it tricks you into thinking that you're relaxing, but your brain is actually working really hard in a really unnatural way for it, and it usually leaves most of us feeling groggy and restless. Hot tip, get rid of the phones. Probably not realistic for you, but maybe find ways to break the scrolling. This is easier said than done. For me, like I said, I've deleted a lot of apps from my phone. I've found that I can do basically all that I need from my computer when I'm sitting at my desk intentionally. So it's forced me to break that habit loop. I don't really have anything to pick my phone up to do except maybe send a text message. Maybe you choose that you're going to leave your phone in the bedroom for a few hours a day, or you're gonna put it in a lockbox. I've done this in the past, and I think it's a really good first step. At the end of the day, I think having set chunks of time that you're without your phone is the most beneficial. And I have found from my experience going through this last few years, it needs to be good chunks of time. A half an hour is not going to do it. Look for chunks of 3 to 5 hours to start. And if that feels like way too much, start with 1 to 2 hours and then work your way up. Number 6, is it number 6 or did we just do number 4? I don't know. But the next one is visual clutter. Visual clutter is giving you mental clutter. According to a lot of research, you've probably heard these stats thrown around a million times, but basically they have proven that when your environment is cluttered, it competes for your attention the same way that like a loud room would. They say that living in a cluttered environment leads to stress and procrastination, all sorts of stuff. Your brain is basically constantly processing what it sees, even if you're not consciously paying attention to us. And I'm sure many of us have heard the term silent to-do list. This is the idea that everything you own is reminding you of things you have to get done. That pile of papers on the counter is reminding you need to fill them out and send them back. The overflowing laundry basket, you need to switch the laundry. The toys you keep stepping over, you really should purge them and clean the playroom. Your brain is quietly tracking all of it in the background, which creates a low-level stress response like all of the time. And I think this one is pretty obvious. I think we have all experienced that feeling when we look at our house or our room when it's in a messy or cluttered state, and our instant reaction almost always is going to be overwhelmed. Visual clutter is like background noise, and it's not like relaxing, quiet, classical music background noise. It's like a newborn crying background noise. And even if you can like kind of tune it out for a little bit, it is still draining your mental energy. And that's why a clean space feels peaceful, right? If you've walked into a clean room that's recently decluttered, you're instantly going to feel better. Obviously, the answer here is to declutter, and decluttering is a whole topic on itself, but I have found it's really a way of life that you can start to slowly adopt. You can get a little bit better every month. If you learn to let go, if you face your buying habits, if you become good at habitually purging and you learn to live with less. But I will give you my two best hot tips when it comes to decluttering. And the first is the 10-minute rule, and the second is the flat surfaces rule. And if you're not new to my channel, you've heard me talk about both of these like 1,000 times, but I'll go over them really quickly. The 10-minute rule is just to set a 10-minute alarm and declutter one area or room for 10 minutes. You will be amazed at what you can accomplish in 10 minutes and how much more clean and calm and peaceful your space will feel. The other one is the flat surfaces rule. So this is where you're going to go and remove as much as humanely possible from your flat surfaces. Flat surfaces are things like counters, tables, shelves. These things love to accumulate visual clutter, so really push yourself to remove as much as possible, even things that usually you would leave out. Put appliances away, tuck tools away into drawers, take things back to where they belong. Clear off those flat surfaces as much as you can, because the space is going to feel so much better when it is not littered with stuff. You'll be amazed at how much calmer you feel just by clearing one visual zone. Number 7 or 6, debatable, I forget where we are, is skipping your routines. Now, I live and die by my routines, but I have not always been this way. I had to learn the hard way how important routines are to keeping my life running smoothly. And routines don't have to be these like monumental things. Like you see these morning routines on Instagram at some fitness junkie, and they've like run 5 miles, taken a shower, gotten dressed, drank a green smoothie, and packed a homemade lunch all by 6:30 a.m. We don't need to be doing those routines. Routines can be for anyone, and they can be whatever works for you. If you are tired of feeling like you're constantly playing catch up, you can fix that with a routine. Without routines, your brain has to make a million little decisions all day long. But using routines acts like anchors in your day, and ones that kind of start to happen on autopilot. Whenever you have routines that you do over and over again, day after day, week after week, they just start to happen, and you don't really need to think about them. You don't have to be on some rigid schedule. They're like rhythms keeping your life moving. So a simple morning routine: coffee, put a load of laundry in, check the calendar, prep the kids' breakfast. An evening routine: wipe the counters, clean the sink, prep lunches, 10-minute tidy, pick out tomorrow's outfit. So hot tip here, if you're a longtime viewer, you probably know what I'm gonna say. You know what routine I'm going to mention as my hot tip. If you know the answer, hit pause and say it in the comments. But yes, it is my kitchen sink rule. This is the first routine I ever adopted, and the one that, as dramatic as it sounds, legitimately changed the course of my life forever. I was, as millennials like to say, a hot mess express. Do we still say hot mess express? I think that we should bring it back. I never felt like I could get my house clean. I was one of those people that you could not just stop by because the place was going to be a mess, and I hated it about myself, but I didn't know how to change it. And so I started with one routine, which was every night I wasn't going to go to bed without cleaning my kitchen sink. So I forced myself, no matter how tired, no matter how busy I was, I would clean out my kitchen sink. And that routine turned into other routines like cleaning up the living room and wiping down the counters. All of those things just sort of compounded into more and more good routines. So my hot tip is Pick one pain point that you have in your life and pick a single routine to fix it, and then stick with it day after day, week after week, year after year. When you wake up in the morning and you don't want to do it anyways, because that is how routines stick. Habit number 8 or 7, still not sure. But whatever, it is the last one, and that is living in the future. So many of us live in the future one of two ways, either in worry or in hope. And both prevent us from feeling grounded in the here and now and lead to overwhelm. So let's talk about it first. Worrying. Constantly worrying about what might happen, doing worst case scenarios, right? This is pretty obvious. It's going to keep your brain in a state of essentially like low level panic. It's what psychologists like to call anticipatory anxiety. Got like a little ring to it, you know? It is where your brain is trying to prepare for future stress by imagining it over and over and over again, as if you can like worry yourself out of it. But the problem that research has shown is that people who fixate too much on the future outcomes tend to experience significantly higher levels of anxiety and stress. We think we're worrying ourselves out of it, but really we're worrying ourselves into it, because your brain cannot always distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. There's a really well-known quote by Dr. Joe Dispenza where he says, "The body doesn't know the difference between an event that is created by life and one that is created by thought." But as I mentioned, when it comes to living in the future, instead of falling into the worry route, we can also do the opposite and look at the future with a sort of like blind hope. We can convince ourselves that our life will magically feel better once we hit some sort of imaginary milestone, right? Once I finally get the house clean, I will feel like I'm on top of things. Or once I pay off debt, once I lose 10 pounds, once I get a new job, etc., 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 you get the point. The problem here is that we get stuck chasing the next version of peace instead of looking at how we can create it right now. I heard a quote once that has always stuck with me, and it said something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing it here, but basically it's that you can be happy with where you are while still working for something better. If you are unable to be grateful for what you have now, the achievements that you have already accomplished, you're never going to be happy, because the minute you hit that next goal or milestone, you're just going to replace it with another one. And I'm not saying that adding new, bigger goals is a bad thing. I think goals are important. I think that you should set them. I think that you should set really big ones, just so long as you make sure that you pause along the way to appreciate the progress, so you're not always just looking forward saying it'll be better when. People who are living in the future, whether with worry or with blind hope, it tends to, as studies show, raise anxiety and reduce life satisfaction. And I'm going to pop in a clip from my chat with Emma on that exact topic right here.
Oftentimes our mind is not in the present moment, right? We're either thinking about something that happened or thinking about something that's going to happen or that we need to do. But what research shows is that we're never happier than when we're right here, right now in the present moment. And then, you know, those moments when you're totally in the present moment because you're with your child and it's this magical moment, or you're in nature and you're just like, I'm on a hike and I'm with the trees and I'm feeling in the present moment. That's when we're happiest. And research shows that we're happiest when we're in the present moment, even if we're doing something we don't like the dishes. And what all these things are doing is they're pulling us out of the present moment. And then we're wondering why we're not feeling well. And so the trick is, let's get our mind back into the here and now, which is so challenging in these times, but it is so key to be able to have that emotional sovereignty, that ability to stay calm and enjoy and be with what is.
I love how you said that we're happiest present even if we're doing something we don't enjoy, because I can totally relate to that. Like when I force myself to turn everything off, to put the distractions away, I can be doing something and I can be like, I feel bored doing this, or this is not enjoyable. But that is when I feel the most calm. It's when I feel the most present, even if I'm not enjoying the task that I'm at. Okay, so my hot tip here, if you're someone who spends a lot of time worrying for the future, try a worry dump and have a time for it. So like every night before bed, you grab a book and you just jot down what you're worried about. There's something about getting thoughts out of your head and onto paper that can make us feel unburdened of them. And having a specific time can help you during the day, because you can say, not worrying about that right now. I will worry about that at 7:30 when I do my worry dump, which I know sounds kind of funny, but it almost helps you worry more productively. And if you're somebody who is the opposite, you are a blind hope person saying it'll be better when kind of person, gratitude journaling could do wonders for you, writing down things that you were thankful for every morning, or I don't know, every night, or whenever you want to write them down. I just realized I was so excited to upload this video and start editing it because I was so excited about this content. I never signed off. I never did like my goodbyes. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it gave you some insights on some things that maybe you could change in your life to hopefully help decrease some of the overwhelm. These are things that truly I have been adopting in my life and have been making such a big difference. But as always, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to yourself and others, and I will see you all in my next video.